Good evening. So it seems as though something has led you to the campsite of the Orator. Well, as you can see, I've stoked the fire, which means it's time for you to pull up your chair and settle in, because tonight, I have another tale to tell. When Maria gets a friend request from a long-lost cousin who's living in Belgium, her and her parents are excited to invite them over to New Jersey to their home to stay for a few weeks. And at first, everything is great, until something offends this cousin. Then suddenly he's doing things behind closed doors, and there's a darkness in the house. Things escalate, and before they're through, the evil is so intense that it will take 2 priests to cleanse what this man has done. Before we begin, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do these longer videos twice a week, Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Second, as I mentioned, all of my stories are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. Today's story comes from us from Redditor Spicy Crab Roll 0118, and I will make sure to link their story below. But if you or anybody you know has a story and you think that it would fit well on my channel, just reach out to me on any of my social media and we'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And now with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's tale. It is a story that I call The Cousin from Belgium. Maria is 19 years old and she's a sophomore in college. She's currently living with her parents in New Jersey while she goes to school. And one day, Maria is on her phone scrolling on Facebook when she suddenly gets a friend request. She accepts the friend request and she starts chatting with this person, only to discover that it is her cousin Antonio, who she really doesn't know anything about. This is sort of like a long-lost cousin. And their family, Maria and her family, they're Sicilian. And so is her cousin, Antonio, but he's currently living in Belgium. And so over the next couple of weeks, Maria and Antonio, they talk online and they discover that they have a ton in common with one another and they get along really well. And so Maria and her parents, after a long, lengthy discussion about what they might be able to do, they end up inviting Antonio from Belgium all the way over to where they live in New Jersey just to stay with them for a couple weeks and get to know a piece of their family that they've sort of lost touch with over the years. And Antonio accepts, and shortly after, he is on their front doorstep, ready to stay with them for a few weeks. And so Maria's first impression of Antonio is that he's a very handsome guy. In fact, he could look like a model. He's tall and thin, he's got long raven black hair, and he just really looks very handsome. And he's also really nice. They get along really well. And over the next few days, Maria, she introduces him to friends. They go about the town. They're eating all of their meals together. And man, it is everything that they were both hoping that it would be. But, over the days and then eventually the weeks, Antonio, it's like he seems to have an agenda where he wants to date some of Maria's friends. The problem is all of Maria's friends, they already have boyfriends, and so he gets really frustrated by this. At first, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but then over the next few days, it's like it escalates. Antonio, he seems very frustrated, way, way more so than would make any sense. And he starts to get really rude. And before, he was very nice and polite, but now he's starting to make really lewd remarks, especially about Maria. He will say things about her outfit. That shirt's really tight, that doesn't look very good on you. And then it starts to get even more offensive. And he starts calling Maria specifically very derogatory names. He calls her a and a and says that she's doing what she's doing, the way she's dressing, the people who she hangs around with. He says that she's doing all of these things just for attention and because she likes the attention of guys. The problem is Maria, she's in a relationship already. Now, her boyfriend, he's in the military and he's off, at a military base. And so it is a long distance relationship. And truthfully, it is a little bit on and again, off again. But Maria, she's loyal to her boyfriend. She does not do any of the stuff that her cousin is accusing her of. And so she continues to get offended by it, but it's like her cousin, he's doing this behind her parents' back and in secret, and then he's being very polite up front, and it's just very frustrating to Maria. And it all sort of culminates one day when Maria, she's on her phone, she's not with Antonio at all, and she suddenly gets a picture from him, a text message with a picture on it. She opens it, she looks at it, and it's a picture of her, Maria, when she was a little girl in the bathtub, and Antonio, with the picture, he's sent an accompanying text that basically says, "Ooh, look what little girl I found in the tub." And it's just this really creepy, weird message from her cousin, and she's already gotten these wrong, creepy, weird vibes from him over the last couple of days, and so this is sort of the last straw. She's very fed up with it. She goes to her parents, she's like, "I don't like this. This is really weird." Her parents still are trying to sort of defend him. "Hey, listen, I understand. Yeah, it's a little bit odd. Just give him some grace." But at this point, Maria has none left. She starts avoiding Antonio. She tries to not go near him at all. She takes her meals to her room. She tries to seriously avoid him as much as possible. But like, they live together in the same house right now. It's just not possible. And so they start breaking out into these big fights every single time he says something cross. Maria, she doesn't let it slide anymore. She starts yelling back at him. And so these fights start breaking out. And one night, this big fight breaks out. Maria comes in from being out for the night, and she comes in, and Antonio's there, and, you know, he takes one look at her outfit, and he says this really offensive thing. He says, you know, "I bet your boyfriend would just love to rip that outfit off of you." And Maria, she's so taken aback, so disgusted by this. They start this big fight, and Maria, she ends up going to her room, crying, slamming the door, and going to sleep, and she literally cries herself to sleep that night. And then she wakes up at 3 in the morning, and, you know, she's kind of had this horrible nightmare, and so she's waking up because of the nightmare, and in her nightmare, the house was haunted, and evil things were happening, and she doesn't remember a ton of the details, but she remembers she wakes up, and she's in this cold sweat, and she's terrified, and then this picture frame that has been on her wall forever, and has been stable and secured to her wall, suddenly just drops, falls down, and crashes, and that really wakes her up. It's like her focus was on the dream, on this nightmare that she had had, but now this falling picture frame, it wakes her up to reality and brings her fully conscious, and she realizes in the bathroom down the hallway, she could hear music playing in there and water running in there, like somebody has the faucets on. And so she's listening to try to hear something more than that, but she can't. It's like whoever's in the bathroom doing whatever it is that they're doing, they've made enough noise so that nobody can hear whatever it is that they're doing. And so Maria, she thinks it's really weird, but it's the middle of the night, and so, you know, the grogginess eventually seizes her and pulls her back into sleep. And then the next morning, she wakes up, and she goes out to breakfast, and Antonio's already at the breakfast table, and he just gives her this very creepy, knowing look, like something has changed, something has happened. And Maria, you know, as spooked out as she is by this look and his overall vibe, he's only a couple days from leaving. And so Maria's like, you know what, whatever it is, however weird this is, at least he's going to be gone in a few days. We'll never invite him back, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. But over the next couple of days, things get really, really weird. The first thing that Maria notices is that her bedroom itself has this really sort of dark, oppressive feel. She really doesn't want to go into it anymore like she used to, and it just feels really weird. The other thing that's weird is that their grandma, who stays with them, she has, you know, she's very religious. Her husband, in fact, you know, was very religious, collected like religious artifacts over the years. And so she's a very religious woman. And, you know, after Antonio was in the bathroom that night and did whatever it is he did in there with the running water and the loud music and then his creepy smirk, after that, Maria's grandma wanted to stay away from Antonio too. Every time he would be around, she would hold up a cross, and she was just acting really weird around him, like she didn't like it either. And so the whole family is a little weirded out by it, but one day, eventually, Antonio does leave. It's his departure date, he goes home, and so finally Maria thinks at least he's gone and everything's good. And so right after he leaves, they end up going into his bedroom to figure out like what was going on, because he was quite secretive about his bedroom. Now his bedroom is actually where their grandpa's stuff was stored. Now, their grandpa, he was, like I said, he was a very religious man. He collected artifacts, and so they go in there, and the first thing they notice is that some of these religious statues that he's collected over the years, instead of facing out on the shelves as they should be, they're actually facing inward, like they're facing the walls. And so right away, they think that's pretty weird. And then they go and they start snooping around, and in the garbage, they find two different receipts. The first receipt is for some gospel music CD, and so that's pretty straightforward. Very weird, because he never listened to gospel music the entire time that they were together, and so it was weird to find this CD. The other thing was much stranger. It was a receipt, and it was taped to this box, and they pick it up and they look at it, and it's this box from this morgue. And so they end up having to call and do some digging, and it came from this funeral home. And for some reason, it was like 2 to 5 pound package. The funeral home would not disclose to them what it was that they sent. And so they kind of did this little paper trail to figure it out. They tracked it down to where it went, but now they have no clue what it was that he actually bought. And so now Maria, she's really worried, because she just had this, something weird happened in the bathroom that night at 3 a.m. And ever since then, the energy's been really weird. And now they're discovering these really weird receipts in the trash, and these statues are turned around, and everybody's really freaked out. But at least he's gone. And so they decide to just sort of move on with their lives. The problem is, even though Antonio is gone, whatever darkness is in the house, it has not dissipated. In fact, if anything, it's gotten a lot worse. Over the next few days, Maria, she starts having these really serious nightmares. She keeps waking up every single morning right at 3 a.m. It doesn't matter if she goes to bed early or late. She can sleep deprive herself. No matter what, she's up at 3 a.m. And so that's really weird. The vibes in her room are just way off, very dark. In fact, one of her friends comes in one day, and she takes one step in this room, and she says, no, something weird is going on here. I don't want to stay in this room. Now, Maria hadn't even talked to her about anything, but she only needed 1 foot in that room before she realized something was going on. And so the energy and vibes of the room and really the house are so bad that Maria, she decides that she wants to call a priest. She's going to call the local clergy, have them come in and see if they can cleanse whatever has happened. And so, it's just gotten worse and worse. And so the day she decides that she's going to do this, she decides, I'm going to stay up all night. I'm too scared to go to sleep. Weird things keep happening every single night. So I'm just going to stay up through the night, and then in the morning I will call them, and they can come out in the morning and handle this. And so she's at her mirror at her desk, and she's just sort of doing her makeup, trying to keep herself awake through the night, and her phone buzzes. And so, she's doing her makeup. She looks down to see what's going on the phone, and then when she looks up, there is a handprint on the mirror. It's this really big hand, way bigger than hers, bigger than most adult hands, really big, prominent handprint. And it was not there just seconds ago. And of course, this terrifies Maria, so much so that she calls the local clergy right away. She calls her church and she says, I need somebody out here now. She explains everything that happened, and they do actually send a priest. And this guy comes to their house, he walks through, and right away he says, yeah, something weird is going on here. I'm definitely sensing dark energy. So he walks through, he's trying to cleanse everything, and while he's in Maria's room, he feels something physically touch him, and he swears that there's a portal on the mirror, that the mirror is the center of where this evil is coming. And so he cleanses the house, and he pays special attention to the mirror, sprinkling holy water on it and praying, and then by the time he's finished, he thinks the evil has vacated the house and that he's dealt with it. So he leaves. But it seems like whatever it is that he did, that first priest, it actually made things worse. Like whatever it is, maybe he angered the spirit. Because after this, things drastically escalate. They start hearing noises in their house all the time. Things crashing around in rooms, moving around, footsteps all over. Maria's younger brother, he starts having these nightmares about monsters in Maria's room like every single night. Maria is continuing to wake up at 3 a.m. every single morning. And then things get even crazier. One day, Maria and her mom are sitting there, and a bucket of pencils lifts up off the desk and flies across the room with nobody else around the room at all. And then Maria's mom, one day, gets a phone call. So she picks up her phone and she looks, and it's the number of her husband who passed away. And it's not possible that this is his number. They never gave the number to somebody else. This number should basically be retired. And so she answers the phone, and there's nothing on the other end, just static. And over the next couple of days, she continues to get phone calls from this number over and over again. And so they call the phone company and they start trying to trace who could possibly be behind this. And it turns out that that number was indeed retired. It's not even possible that that number is calling her phone. And so that's the last straw. They call it the church again. They say, whatever happened, it is not fixed. It's worse. We need help now. And so then this time they send a new priest out and he does a much more thorough cleansing. He cleanses the entire house. He walks through every room. He's there for hours. And by the time he's done, the house finally feels normal again. And that night, Maria slept through the night for the first time in forever. And so now they feel like they know. They have basically proof that something dark and evil has happened. And so then they go and they start talking to Maria's grandma because remember, she felt really weird about stuff and she was holding the cross and kind of avoiding him. And when they talk to her, she starts giving some crazy details. She says that when he walked by, when she saw Antonio walk by her, she swears that he had black eyes. And that's why she would grab the cross and pray every time she swore he was evil or that he had something evil inside of him. And she said that there were times where he'd be on one side of the house, so she'd leave and go to the other side, and then suddenly he'd be there. Like he moved so much faster than should even be possible to be where he was to the other side of the house. And then they start talking, and Maria is discovering all of these weird things. Like she remembers one time he was talking, they were talking with a group of friends about how, he had great looks and how he could be a model. And he literally said one time that he sold his soul for his looks. And at the time, Maria's thinking, that he's just a weird guy or he said something strange. But now all of these other pieces of evidence are coming into play. And she's wondering, like, is this guy involved in something demonic and evil? Is it really how he got his good looks? Can he really do these things? There seems to be a lot of evidence to support it. And so they call him eventually, and they literally confront him and say, listen, we know you did something. What did you do? And Antonio, he just denies all of it. He doesn't know what they're talking about. And they can't really do anything. He's all the way back in Belgium, and all they're doing is trying to berate him on the phone. And so they can't get any information out of him. And so they think this is the end. At least the house is cleansed and everything's taken care of. And so Maria, eventually, over the next couple of months, she ends up moving back into college and she's going back to school. And then one day, Antonio shows up at their doorstep, all the way from Belgium to New Jersey. Unannounced, shows up at the doorstep. And he looks bad. He looks disheveled and strung out, thin, sweaty. He's got scratches across his chest. And he basically just says, all right, I'm ready to tell you what happened and what I did. And so Maria's mom, this is who he's talking to, she's so freaked out by this that she says, we're not doing this at my home. You're not welcome in my home. We can meet at the local coffee shop, and I'm bringing a priest with me. And he says, all right. So he goes, and he meets them there. Maria's mom shows up with the priest. They sit down, and they start to question Antonio. But once again, he just denies everything. I don't know what you're talking about. They're like, why are you here? And he's giving these nonsense answers or no answers. And then he just gets up, turns, leaves, and he never shows up again. And now he's suddenly gone from their lives, which they're very grateful for. But they always think back on this time where they invited this cousin from Belgium over to their house for a few weeks. And for some reason, he was so offended by the way he was treated that he summoned something evil that needed to be cleansed from their home. And so that's going to do it. If you found yourself enjoying this or any of the stories on my channel, first-hand true accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then allow the spirits to guide your planchette to both the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, and I do these longer videos twice a week, Monday and Friday, both at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then I also throw out shorts when I can. Second, as I mentioned, all my stories, they are true first-hand accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you or anybody you know has a story that you think would fit well on my channel, just reach out to me on any of my social media, and we'll find a time to get together, collect your story, and potentially one day feature it here on The Orator. And so until next time, where you may pull up your chair and settle in, the fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell.